On Wednesday, President Obama revealed his plan to put an end to gun violence.
Congress should restore a ban on military-style assault weapons and a 10-round limit for magazines. The type of assault rifle used in Aurora, for example, when paired with high-capacity magazines, has one purpose: to pump out as many bullets as possible, as quickly as possible, to do as much damage, using bullets often designed to inflict maximum damage.
All right, when the president describes what assault weapons are, does he really know what the heck he's talking about? Well, my next guest does. He's a firearms expert, and he's here to clarify the difference between what a gun looks like and how lethal it really is. Joining me now is Larry Correia, who I think wrote the best, most definitive and thorough article on understanding this whole issue that I have ever read by anybody, anywhere. We've got it posted on my website, MikeHuckabee.com, a link to it. It's too long for us to read on air. Please read it. But Larry, I'm so glad that you're here, because when I read your article, it just made a lot of sense. And I want you to help us understand when people use this term, assault weapon, where are they going wrong?
Well, thanks for having me on, Governor. The problem is it's kind of a nebulous political term. As far as actual gun people go, there is such a thing as assault weapon, but they have been regulated in America since before they were invented. What these people are referring to as an assault weapon today is actually just a standard semi-automatic, magazine-fed firearm that they have some features on, mostly cosmetic, that make these people uncomfortable. They're not any more deadly or dangerous than any other firearm you'd use for self-defense.
Well, in fact, I told my staff I went deer hunting this past Tuesday, and the rifle that I used was far more powerful than the Bushmaster that everybody's all upset about. We've got a picture of the Bushmaster, Larry, and what I want to do is ask you to describe some of these features, because there are 5 specific things that are proposed to be banned. One of them is the flash suppressor at the end of the barrel. Tell us about the flash suppressor and why would that be banned?
The flash suppressor, all it does is, as expanding gases exit the muzzle, it diverts them off to the side instead of directly straight forward. And the only thing that does is that it doesn't get in your face as much. I mean, you don't get it blinded as much in the dark. It doesn't make the gun any more dangerous. And in fact, when they hear suppressor, I think people are thinking like, movies, like a suppressor or a sound silencer in a movie. That's not what it does at all. It's just a little bird cage that makes it so you're not getting as much gas back in your face.
Okay, another piece of this weapon is the barrel shroud. And the barrel shroud, again, is one of the items that they've marked specifically to be banned. What does it do?
The barrel shroud is just a cosmetic piece of sheet metal that goes over a barrel to keep you from burning your hands. So if your barrel is hot and you pick it up by the barrel, you touch the sheet metal instead of the barrel. It doesn't really do anything, and in fact, really it's kind of a joke, because back during the last assault weapons ban, Cynthia McKinney, I believe, is the senator that said this, was somebody asked her, well, what is a barrel shroud? And she didn't even know, and she had written it, and she said, well, I think it's a shoulder thing that goes up. So I'm glad, the thousands of us just inadvertently committed felonies because we might have a shoulder thing that goes up.
That's the point. All right, let's talk about the magazine, because one of the big pieces of the president's proposal, let's ban high-capacity magazines. And I've even heard the president's press secretaries, this is just common sense. Well, to some of us, it's not so common. Explain why that doesn't make people safer.
Well, it's actually, there's a few parts to this. First off, logistically banning magazines will do nothing, because there are literally hundreds of millions of them already in circulation. Now, for legitimate self-defense use, we want to have magazines that hold more rounds. No one has ever survived a gunfight and said, doggone it, I wish I hadn't brought all those extra bullets. That's just not how it works. You want as many rounds as possible. Unlike the movies, when you shoot somebody, they don't just stop. Oftentimes you have to hit them repeatedly. Sometimes you miss. Sometimes they're hiding behind something your bullets don't penetrate. Sometimes there's multiple assailants. Now, as far as the bad guys, the mass shooters, they think, well, if he has less bullets in his gun, then he's not going to be able to shoot as many people. And that's not the case. And what we've seen in most mass shootings is because the bad guy picks the engagement, he decides when to start shooting, where to start shooting. If he's using firearms that hold less rounds of ammunition, he usually just carries multiple firearms, and then he'll reload before he moves to the next firing position. Now, me or you or any other person defending themselves, we want as many rounds in the gun as possible because we don't get to pick the engagement. The bad guy does. We have to respond.
All right, Larry, we only have about a minute and a half to hit these other two features. One is the pistol grip. I mean, that literally is nothing more than just how you can hold the gun, right?
How you can hold it.
Right.
That literally makes no difference whatsoever.
And then the stock extension, which is the scary feature that sometimes people act like is a big deal. Why is that not a big deal?
Well, for example, all that does is you can size it up and down for your length of pull on your gun. I'm 6'5". If I want to go shooting with my wife, we're going to collapse it down for her. We can shoot the same gun that way. Otherwise, my gun is much, it's too large. Or, I mean, if little children if my kids want to shoot my gun, I can size it to them. All it is just adjustability. There's nothing about an adjustable stock that affects lethality in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I want to continue this with you, Larry. We want to ask, should teachers be armed in school? Larry's got a thought on that, and he's going to explain what it is and why. You don't want to miss what Larry has to say. We'll be right back. We are back with Larry Correia, and I want to remind you again, Larry has written what I am absolutely convinced is the most methodical, logical, and rational understanding of this entire issue that I've ever seen. He's got a long and thorough piece. We've got a link to it at MikeHuckabee.com. I want you to read it if you're really interested in a lot more depth than we'll ever have time tonight. Larry, one of the issues that has been discussed, the NRA proposed it. It almost seems like a part of the president's plan, although his is more about armed police officers, resource officers. But you say that if we had teachers who were trained in schools and were armed, they could prevent the kind of shootings, or at least maybe stop them before they get out of hand, like what happened at Sandy Hook. But that scares people, armed teachers. Should they be afraid of that?
No. And when I say armed teachers, I don't mean mandatory arming all teachers, by no means. But most people don't realize that already in the state of Utah, there are armed teachers, because basically our concealed weapons laws allow the carrying of firearms in schools by, legal people. So if you have a teacher who has a concealed weapons permit, so this is somebody who's volunteered to go through the process and go through the background checks, and they wish to carry a firearm at work, they do so. The gun is concealed. Nobody knows the gun is even there until it has to be produced. And we've been doing this for several years now. And I have people tell me, well, but the teacher's not as trained as a police officer. Well, that's true, but they don't need to be Navy SEALs. They just need to be speed bumps. What we've seen over and over again with these kind of people, these violent mass shooters, is they tend to be operating in a fantasy bubble. And they will attack and they will be hurting people, but then when they get an immediate violent response and some actual resistance, they tend to have that fantasy bubble burst, and then they will usually either kill themselves or surrender. Now, if the police are your immediate violent response, a lot of times that's going to be, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that bad guy can be there shooting people. If you have armed teachers or a principal or a school bus driver or a janitor, whatever it may be, just a person with a concealed weapons permit, a parent that's visiting, those people can respond immediately. Worst case scenario, the bad guy is going to be concentrating on killing them instead of the children, and that will at least buy more time. So it's just installing speed bumps is what I'm proposing.
What's wrong with gun-free zones? That seems to be one of the big solutions that people think ought to work.
They just don't work. People think of gun-free zones like, I put up a sign that says no guns allowed, but think about it. You're a mass killer. You're looking to become the most famous person in the world. So you're going to go to a place where you can get that body count, and then everyone in the media is going to talk about you for weeks. The President of the United States will stop and have a press conference to try to understand you. And you're going to go to the place with all the victims. Where can you go that you won't face an immediate violent response? A gun-free zone. And what we've seen over and over and over for decades now is almost all of our mass shootings have taken place in these supposed gun-free zones. Just without fail. People tend to think of this sign that says no guns allowed. It's not a cross that wards off vampires. bad guys are going to look at that and say, ooh, this is a hunting preserve of innocent people. I can go in there. I'm going to have plenty of time to work. The shooter at the Batman movie, he went to a theater that was posted no guns allowed. Here locally, we had a shooting a few years ago. He went to a mall that was posted no guns allowed. We see this over and over and over again. They just simply don't work.
Larry, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your response and being here. And again, I want to point people to your article. I hope that they will get to know more about you, because I think if they do, they'll understand this issue in a very thoughtful and a rational way, something that we're missing in the entire debate. Larry Correia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Governor.
Well, it's been 50 years since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. America's first black president will be publicly sworn in for the second time on the observation of Dr. King's birthday. Dr. King's niece, Alveda King, reflects on her uncle's legacy during this landmark year when we return.